The British monarchy has seen many turning points in its long and storied history, but few moments have been as dramatic and consequential as Prince Harry's final break from his royal past. For years, his departure from royal duties, his candid revelations about life behind palace walls, and his decision to settle permanently in the United States have fueled controversy and speculation. But now, with the confirmation that Prince Harry has officially become a permanent resident of the United States, the royal family has made a decisive move, stripping him of his Sussex title once and for all. This is not just another headline in the ongoing saga of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's post-royal lives. It is a defining moment in the history of the monarchy, a moment that signals a complete severance between the Duke of Sussex and the institution that once defined his entire existence. It is also a moment of celebration for some within the royal family, who see this as a necessary and inevitable step in moving forward without the disruptions Harry has caused since his departure. For others, however, it raises serious questions about the future of the monarchy and whether it can continue to maintain its relevance in an era where tradition and duty are being challenged like never before. To fully understand the weight of this decision, we must first revisit how things reached this point. When Prince Harry and Meghan Markle announced their decision to step back as senior royals in January 2020, it sent shockwaves through the royal establishment. Never before had a modern royal of Harry's stature voluntarily relinquished his role, choosing instead to carve out a life independent of the crown. The so-called Megxit deal was negotiated, allowing the couple to retain their Duke and Duchess of Sussex titles while stepping away from official duties. But even at that time, many believed that this was just the beginning of a much larger rift, one that could eventually see Harry permanently cut off from the monarchy. In the years that followed, that rift only deepened. The couple's bombshell interview with Oprah Winfrey in March 2021 marked a turning point. For the first time, Harry and Meghan aired their grievances about life within the royal family, making allegations of racism, emotional neglect, and betrayal. It was a moment that shattered the image of unity within the House of Windsor, leaving the monarchy scrambling to contain the fallout. While Buckingham Palace responded with the now famous phrase, "Recollections may vary," it was clear that the damage had been done. Then came Spare, Prince Harry's explosive memoir, which provided even more personal and damaging details about his experiences growing up as the spare to Prince William's heir. He painted a picture of a royal life filled with emotional turmoil, resentment, and strained relationships. The book included shocking revelations about private conversations, bitter confrontations with his brother, and grievances with his father, King Charles. By this point, it had become evident that Harry had burned every bridge leading back to the royal fold. Despite the ongoing tensions, the Sussexes continued to straddle the line between royalty and celebrity, using their titles to build lucrative business ventures in the United States. They secured multimillion-dollar deals with Netflix, Spotify, and Penguin Random House, positioning themselves as global influencers and public figures. But their use of royal branding became a point of contention, with critics arguing that they were profiting off the very institution they had chosen to leave behind. As their projects began to falter, Spotify ending their deal, criticism of their Netflix content, and declining public interest, the pressure mounted for the palace to take decisive action. That moment has now arrived. With Harry's official confirmation that he is a permanent resident of the United States, the royal family has taken what many see as the final step in his departure from royal life, stripping him of the Sussex title. For some, this is a long overdue correction. If Harry has chosen to permanently live in another country and build a new identity outside of the monarchy, then why should he continue to hold a title that connects him to an institution he has so openly criticized? For others, however, this decision raises deeper questions about the nature of royal titles, the fairness of this move, and whether it sets a dangerous precedent for future royals who may wish to step away from their duties. The process of stripping a royal title is not as simple as making a public announcement. It involves constitutional considerations, discussions among senior royals, and formal procedures that must be followed. In this case, the decision would have required the approval of King Charles, the advice of palace advisors, and potentially even the involvement of the British Parliament. Historically, the monarchy has been reluctant to strip titles except in extreme cases. When King Edward VIII abdicated the throne in 1936 to Mary Wallis Simpson, He was given the title Duke of Windsor, but was denied the privilege of passing that title to his descendants. More recently, Prince Andrew was stripped of his military honors and royal patronages amid legal controversies, but he was allowed to retain the title Duke of York. Harry's case is different in many ways. Unlike Edward VIII, he is not an abdicated king. Unlike Prince Andrew, he has not been embroiled in legal scandals of a criminal nature. His offense, in the eyes of the monarchy, has been his continued public criticism of the institution and his decision to permanently relocate to a foreign country. Does that alone warrant the removal of his title? The debate around this question is likely to continue, but one thing is clear. The royal family is signaling that there is no longer any space for Harry within the fold. As news of this decision spreads, reactions have been swift and divided. Royalists who have long supported the monarchy's traditions see this as a necessary move, an assertion that the monarchy will not be used as a platform for personal gain. They argue that by stripping Harry of his title, King Charles is reinforcing the idea that being a royal is a duty, not a brand. On the other hand, supporters of Harry and Meghan see this as a vindictive act, another example of the royal family shutting out those who do not conform to its rigid expectations. The decision to strip Harry of his title also has significant implications for Meghan Markle. While she has built her own brand outside of the royal family, her title as the Duchess of Sussex has played a role in how she is perceived in the public sphere. If Harry loses his Sussex title, does that mean Meghan will lose hers as well? And if so, will she continue to use the title in unofficial capacities, much like Sarah Ferguson still refers to herself as the Duchess of York despite her divorce from Prince Andrew? The optics of this situation will be closely watched, as it could further impact Meghan's future ventures and public standing. Then there is the question of their children, Archie and Lilibet. Since the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, they have technically been entitled to the titles of Prince and Princess under the 1917 letters patent issued by King George V. However, with their parents fully severed from royal life, the question arises, should they be given these titles at all? If Harry is no longer Duke of Sussex, does that impact the status of his children within the royal family? These are matters that the monarchy will need to address sooner rather than later. As this story unfolds, one thing is certain. This is not just about a title. It is about the finalization of a decision that has been years in the making. Prince Harry's journey from royal prince to independent figure has been filled with twists and turns, controversies, and defining moments. This latest development marks the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another. No longer tethered to the United Kingdom by a royal title, Harry is now free to fully embrace his life as an American resident. But with that freedom comes the loss of a connection to the institution that shaped his entire existence. The impact of this decision will be felt across both sides of the Atlantic. For the British royal family, it marks the conclusion of a turbulent period that began with Megxit. For Prince Harry, it is an official confirmation that there is no turning back. And for the world watching, it is a moment that will shape the ongoing conversation about the monarchy, its traditions, and its place in the modern world. This is just the beginning of a much larger discussion. What does this mean for the royal family's future? How will Harry and Meghan navigate life without royal titles? And most importantly, is this the final chapter in the Sussex saga, or is there still more to come? As we explore these questions in the sections to come, one thing is certain: history is being made, and the world is watching. The decision to strip Prince Harry of his Sussex title did not happen overnight. It was the culmination of years of tension between the Duke of Sussex and the royal family, a conflict that escalated from his initial departure as a senior royal to his full integration into American life. But what really led to this moment? How did the royal family reach the point where they decided to formally remove his connection to the institution? And was this a decision made purely for the good of the monarchy, or was there an element of personal retribution involved? To understand the significance of this move, we must first examine how the monarchy handles royal titles. Unlike in many other countries where noble titles are often hereditary and passed down automatically, British royal titles are granted at the discretion of the reigning monarch. When Prince Harry married Meghan Markle in 2018, Queen Elizabeth II bestowed upon him the title of Duke of Sussex. This was in keeping with royal tradition, as William had been granted the title of Duke of Cambridge upon his marriage to Kate Middleton. and other male members of the royal family had historically received dukedoms upon their weddings. At the time, this title signified a new beginning for Harry, a transition from being the spare prince to a senior working royal who would carve out his own legacy. The Sussexes were expected to support the monarchy through their charitable work and royal duties, traveling on behalf of the crown and strengthening the institution's presence on the global stage. But that vision quickly fell apart when, less than 2 years after their marriage, Harry and Meghan announced their decision to step back from royal life. The departure agreement negotiated in early 2020 allowed them to retain their Duke and Duchess of Sussex titles, but it also included conditions. They were required to give up their use of the HRH, His Her Royal Highness, styling, and were no longer permitted to represent the Queen in any official capacity. At the time, the royal family opted for a compromise rather than an outright severance. The thinking was that, while Harry and Meghan wanted to be financially independent, there was still a possibility that they could return to royal duties in the future. Stripping them of their titles completely might have seemed too extreme, especially while Queen Elizabeth II was still alive and seeking to maintain a sense of unity within the family. However, as time went on, it became clear that the Sussexes had no intention of returning. Instead, they took on high-profile projects that often put them at odds with the royal family. The Oprah interview in 2021 was a major breaking point, as Harry and Meghan openly criticized the monarchy, alleging racism, a lack of support for Meghan's mental health struggles, and deep-rooted dysfunction within the institution. While the palace responded with a carefully worded statement, the damage was done. The interview widened the divide between Harry and his family, making reconciliation increasingly unlikely. The publication of Harry's memoir, Spare, further deepened the rift. In the book, Harry made several explosive claims, including an alleged physical altercation with Prince William and accounts of his strained relationship with his father, King Charles. He described feeling like an outsider within his own family, a spare, whose existence was only relevant as long as he remained close to the heir. He also criticized the way the royal institution handled Meghan's transition into royal life, accusing them of failing to protect her from negative media coverage. For the palace, Spare was not just a personal memoir. It was a direct attack on the monarchy's credibility and reputation. It was at this point that discussions about removing the Sussex title reportedly gained traction within the royal inner circle. While stripping a title is not a decision taken lightly, Harry's continued use of the title while publicly criticizing the institution created an uncomfortable contradiction. He was no longer performing royal duties, yet he still carried a title that linked him to the very establishment he opposed. This led to increasing calls from both royal experts and sections of the British public to formally sever his ties to the monarchy. One major factor in the decision to strip the title was Harry's confirmation that he had become a permanent resident of the United States. For some within the royal family, this was the final proof that he had no intention of ever resuming royal responsibilities. By becoming a U.S. resident, he had effectively chosen to align himself fully with his new life in America, rather than maintaining any real connection to Britain. This raised the question, why should he continue to hold a British royal title if he no longer considered the UK his home? King Charles, now firmly in charge following the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, was said to be deeply conflicted over the decision. Despite everything that had happened, Harry was still his son, and making the final call to strip him of his title would have been an emotional and difficult step. However, Charles is also a pragmatist, and his main priority as king is to preserve the stability of the monarchy. Allowing Harry to continue using his title while living as a private citizen in America posed an ongoing risk to the royal family's credibility. Every public appearance, every interview, and every new business venture undertaken by the Sussexes carried the potential to reflect back on the monarchy, whether they wanted it to or not. There was also an element of precedent to consider. If Harry was allowed to retain his title indefinitely despite having no connection to royal duties, what message would that send to future generations? Could other royals in the future choose to step away and keep their titles while pursuing independent careers? The monarchy, by its very nature, depends on strict hierarchy and clear rules about duty. A blurred line between royal status and private ventures could undermine the very foundation of the institution. Once the decision was made, the process of stripping the title had to be handled carefully. While King Charles had the authority to remove a title, there were legal and procedural considerations. The last time a royal title was formally removed through parliamentary action was in 1917, when King George V issued the Titles Deprivation Act to strip German-born British royals of their titles during World War I. More recently, in 2022, Prince Andrew was stripped of his military honors and royal patronages amid his legal issues, though he retained the title Duke of York. For Harry, the process was slightly different. Because he was not facing legal scandal like Prince Andrew, and because his departure was voluntary, the royal family had to navigate the situation in a way that seemed justified rather than punitive. Behind the scenes, royal aides likely worked on crafting the official announcement, ensuring that it emphasized the natural progression of Harry's own choices rather than portraying it as a punishment. The timing of the announcement was also significant. By making the decision public only after Harry confirmed his permanent U.S. residency, the palace avoided making it seem like they were forcing him out. Instead, it was positioned as a logical step following his own actions. The wording of the official statement, when it came, was expected to be carefully crafted, likely acknowledging Harry's contributions to the royal family while stating that, given his new life abroad, he would no longer hold the title of Duke of Sussex. For many within the royal family, this decision marked the closing of a turbulent chapter. While tensions between Harry and his relatives are unlikely to ever fully disappear, removing his title allows the monarchy to move forward without the constant question of what to do about the Sussexes. It also signals a more decisive approach under King Charles's reign, one that prioritizes the stability and long-term credibility of the monarchy over personal relationships. For Harry, however, this moment represents a complete break from his past. He is now, officially and legally, no longer connected to the British monarchy in any formal capacity. His title, once a symbol of his birthright, is gone. His identity, once shaped by his role within the royal family, has been rewritten. He is now simply Harry, an American resident, a businessman, and a former prince navigating a new world entirely on his own terms. But what does this mean for the future? Does this decision truly mark the end of Harry's royal saga, or is there still more to come? As we continue exploring this story, the next crucial aspect to examine is how the British public has reacted to this decision and whether it strengthens or weakens support for the monarchy. The public reaction to Prince Harry losing his Sussex title has been as divided as his departure from royal life itself. Across the United Kingdom and beyond, the decision has sparked debates about fairness, tradition, and the evolving role of the monarchy. For some, this move was long overdue, a necessary step in solidifying the separation between Harry and the institution he chose to leave. For others, it raises questions about whether the royal family is punishing him for his choices and whether this could set a dangerous precedent for future generations of royals who wish to step away. To understand the full scope of public sentiment, it is essential to break down the different reactions among key groups: the royalists, the younger generation, the political sphere, and the global audience. Each perspective offers a unique lens through which to view this historic decision, shedding light on how the monarchy is perceived in modern times. Among traditional royalists, the reaction has been largely supportive. Many longtime followers of the monarchy see this as a long overdue correction, a necessary move to preserve the integrity of the institution. Their argument is simple. If Prince Harry no longer wants to be a working royal, if he no longer participates in the duties expected of a duke, and if he has chosen to settle in another country permanently, then why should he retain a royal title? To them, a title is not just a name. It is a symbol of service to the crown. Allowing Harry to keep the title of Duke of Sussex despite completely removing himself from royal obligations would have created an uncomfortable contradiction. From their perspective, King Charles was simply reinforcing the idea that royal status is a responsibility, not a birthright that can be leveraged for personal gain. For these royalists, the stripping of the Sussex title is seen as a move that restores dignity to the monarchy. In their view, the past few years have been tumultuous for the royal family, with Harry and Meghan's actions repeatedly drawing negative attention to the institution. The Oprah interview, Spare, the Netflix documentaries, all of these projects have, in their eyes, been a form of betrayal. Many believe that allowing Harry to retain his title after such public criticisms of the monarchy would have been an insult to those who continue to dedicate their lives to upholding royal traditions. However, not all Britons share this perspective. Among younger generations, particularly those who have grown up in an era where individual autonomy is valued more than rigid institutions, the decision to strip Harry of his title has been met with mixed reactions. Many in this group view Harry's departure from royal life not as a rejection of duty, but as a necessary act of personal independence. To them, the royal family represents an outdated system, one that imposes strict expectations on its members while limiting their ability to carve out their own identities. From their perspective, Harry's choice to step away was an act of self-preservation, a decision to break free from the confines of an institution that had historically placed duty above personal well-being. For these younger audiences, the question arises, why should a person be penalized for choosing a different path? They argue that if Harry had remained in the United Kingdom and continued fulfilling royal obligations while openly expressing his discontent, the situation might have been different. But he left. He built a new life. He did what many individuals do when they feel stifled by their circumstances. He sought a fresh start elsewhere. Stripping him of his title, in their eyes, feels more like punishment than practicality. It feels like a message from the monarchy that those who leave will be erased, rather than simply allowed to move on. The political reaction to this decision has been more cautious, with government officials and royal commentators choosing their words carefully. The monarchy, after all, is a deeply embedded institution in British governance, and any significant change within it has implications for the country's image and stability. Politicians who support the monarchy have largely echoed the royalist stance, emphasizing that this move was about maintaining the sanctity of royal titles. However, some political figures, particularly those who advocate for modernization of the monarchy, have questioned whether this decision is a sign that the royal family is resistant to change. For years, there have been discussions in the UK about whether the monarchy should adapt to modern values. Critics argue that the institution must become more flexible, more in touch with contemporary ideals of personal choice and autonomy. In this context, Harry's situation becomes a test case. Should royals be allowed to redefine their roles without fear of losing their titles? Or must they either fully commit to the institution or be completely removed from it? This debate has no easy answers, but it reflects a broader conversation about what the monarchy should represent in the 21st century. Beyond the borders of the United Kingdom, the international reaction has been just as complex. In the United States, where Harry and Meghan have built their new lives, the response has been largely supportive of the Sussexes. American audiences have long viewed the British royal family through a different lens, one that often romanticizes the institution while simultaneously critiquing its rigidity. Many Americans see Harry and Meghan as symbols of resilience, individuals who refuse to conform to outdated expectations and instead chose to forge their own path. For them, the stripping of Harry's title is yet another example of the monarchy's unwillingness to embrace progress. At the same time, international media outlets have taken varying approaches to covering the story. British tabloids have largely framed it as a necessary move, focusing on the idea that this decision was inevitable given Harry's permanent residency in the United States. American publications, on the other hand, have presented it as a dramatic shift, emphasizing the emotional weight of the decision and what it means for Harry's identity. In European countries where monarchies still exist, the coverage has been mixed. Some see it as a sign of the British royal family's strict adherence to tradition, while others view it as an unfortunate example of how rigid the institution remains. One of the most interesting aspects of this reaction has been the role of social media. Unlike in past royal controversies, where public opinion was shaped primarily by newspapers and television, today's conversations happen in real time on platforms like Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. Within hours of the announcement, hashtags related to the decision were trending worldwide. Online discussions ranged from supportive messages for the royal family to passionate defenses of Harry's right to retain his title. Social media has also allowed for a more globalized perspective on the situation. Users from different countries and cultural backgrounds weighed in, offering insights that traditional media might have overlooked. For example, many individuals from former British colonies used this moment to highlight broader criticisms of the monarchy, arguing that the institution has a long history of punishing those who do not conform to its expectations. Others focused on the emotional aspect, questioning how this decision might affect Harry's mental health and sense of identity. The reaction from Harry himself has also been a subject of speculation. As of now, he has not made any direct public statements regarding the loss of his title. However, insiders close to him suggest that he may have anticipated this outcome long before it was officially announced. Given that he has already distanced himself from royal life and established his own career path, it is possible that he sees this as a natural conclusion rather than a shocking betrayal. However, the lack of a formal response does not mean the situation is without personal consequences. Losing a royal title is more than just a change in status. It is the severing of a connection to centuries of history and tradition. Even though Harry has actively worked to separate himself from the monarchy, having that decision made official by the institution itself carries a different weight. It is one thing to walk away. It is another to be told that the door is being permanently closed behind you. For the British public, the long-term impact of this decision remains to be seen. Will it strengthen support for the monarchy, reassuring the public that the royal family is willing to take decisive action to preserve its values? Or will it fuel further criticism, adding to the growing debate about whether the institution should continue to exist in its current form? The answer may depend on how the next chapter of this story unfolds. As we move forward in this discussion, the next key issue to explore is how this decision affects Harry's future and whether he can continue building his brand without the Sussex title. What does this mean for his business ventures, his public image, and his influence in both the UK and the US? And perhaps most importantly, does this decision mark the final chapter in his relationship with the royal family, or is there still a possibility of reconciliation in the years to come? Now that Prince Harry has been officially stripped of his Sussex title, the question remains: what does this mean for his future? Without the royal title that once defined his identity, Harry now finds himself in uncharted territory. While he has spent the last few years transitioning from a senior working royal to an independent public figure, the loss of his title solidifies that break. This decision is not just symbolic. It has real-world implications for his career, public image, and influence in both the United Kingdom and the United States. One of the most immediate concerns is how this affects his brand. Since stepping down from royal duties, Harry and Meghan have leaned heavily on their Duke and Duchess of Sussex titles in their business ventures. Their multi-million-dollar deals with Netflix, Spotify, and Penguin Random House were all, in part, built on the intrigue of their royal connections. Their titles gave them a sense of credibility and distinction in the crowded world of celebrity influence. But now, with Harry no longer being a duke, the question arises: will this impact the way companies and audiences perceive him? In the United States, where Harry has been steadily building his post-royal career, the loss of his title may not be as significant as it would be in the United Kingdom. Americans have historically been fascinated by the British monarchy, but they do not adhere to the same strict social codes that define royal status in the UK. For many Americans, Harry is still a prince, regardless of what official title he holds. His name alone carries weight, and his story remains compelling. An exiled royal who chose personal freedom over duty. This narrative has been central to his and Meghan's appeal in the American market, and it is unlikely to change overnight. However, losing the Sussex title could still present challenges in how he positions himself moving forward. Without a formal royal title, Harry may find it more difficult to differentiate himself from other public figures. The Sussex branding gave him a unique identity, one that allowed him to maintain a connection to the monarchy while pursuing an independent career. Now, he must rely solely on his personal brand, without the prestige that a royal title provides. The financial implications of this shift are also worth considering. While Harry and Meghan have secured major deals in the past, some of those partnerships have not been as successful as expected. Their Spotify deal, which was reportedly worth $20 million, ended prematurely, with industry insiders suggesting that their content failed to meet expectations. Their Netflix projects have had mixed results, with their documentary Harry and Meghan drawing significant attention, but subsequent projects failing to generate the same level of buzz. Without the Sussex title, Harry's marketability could be affected. While he remains a high-profile figure, there is a risk that some companies may see less value in associating with him now that he is no longer officially connected to the royal family. This does not mean he will struggle financially. He and Meghan still have significant wealth and connections, but it does mean they may need to rethink their branding strategy. Another major consideration is how this impacts his work in philanthropy and advocacy. Harry has long been passionate about causes such as mental health, veterans issues, and environmental conservation. His involvement in initiatives like the Invictus Games has been widely praised, and his ability to use his royal status to bring attention to these issues has been a key part of his work. Without a title, will he still have the same level of influence? Will organizations and world leaders continue to view him as a figure of authority in these areas? Or will he now be seen more as a private citizen rather than a global statesman? This is a question that only time will answer, but it is likely that Harry will have to work harder to maintain his credibility in these spaces. One possible path forward is for Harry to fully embrace his American identity. While he has not yet applied for U.S. citizenship, becoming a permanent resident is a significant step in that direction. If he eventually becomes a U.S. citizen, it would further solidify his break from the monarchy and allow him to reinvent himself entirely outside of the royal framework. This could open new doors for him in politics, activism, and public speaking, as he would no longer be constrained by the expectations of being a British royal. However, even as he builds a new life in the United States, Harry cannot completely escape his past. The British media will continue to scrutinize his every move, and his relationship with the royal family will remain a topic of public interest. The question of whether he will ever reconcile with King Charles and Prince William will linger, and his future decisions will inevitably be viewed through the lens of his royal history. For Meghan Markle, the impact of this decision is equally significant. While she has always been more comfortable in the world of Hollywood and entertainment, her role as the Duchess of Sussex gave her a level of prestige that few in the industry could claim. With Harry losing his title, Meghan's status is also in question. Will she continue to use the Duchess of Sussex title in unofficial capacities, or will she follow Harry in fully detaching from royal branding? The loss of the Sussex title may also affect their children, Archie and Lilibet. While the children are technically entitled to be called Prince and Princess under King George V's 1917 letters patent, the removal of Harry's title raises questions about whether they will ever formally take on these royal titles. Given that Harry and Meghan have emphasized raising their children with a sense of normalcy, it is possible that they will choose to forego royal titles altogether. However, if Archie and Lilibet grow up and decide they want to embrace their royal heritage, this decision could complicate matters. One of the most intriguing aspects of this situation is whether Harry will ever regret his choices. In the heat of the moment, stepping away from royal life and embracing a new identity in the United States may have felt like the right decision. But as time passes and the reality of his situation sets in, will he feel the weight of what he has lost? The removal of his title is not just about status. It is about severing a connection to his family, his heritage, and the traditions that shaped his upbringing. While he has spoken about the pain and struggles of growing up in the royal family, there is no denying that his title once afforded him privileges and opportunities that few in the world ever experience. Will he miss that sense of belonging? Will he wish he had handled things differently? There is also the question of whether the loss of his title will impact his relationship with Meghan. Much of their public persona has been built around the idea of them as a royal couple navigating life outside the institution. If Harry's royal connection is completely erased, will that dynamic shift? Will Meghan, who has always been ambitious and career-driven, feel differently about their position in the world without the prestige of a royal title? These are all questions that will unfold in the coming years. For now, Harry must navigate this new reality and find a way to move forward without the title that once defined him. Whether he thrives in this next chapter or finds himself longing for the past remains to be seen. As we continue exploring this story, the next critical aspect to examine is how the royal family moves forward without Harry and whether this decision strengthens or weakens the monarchy in the long run. Is this the beginning of a new era for King Charles, where the royal family is more streamlined and focused? Or does it mark the start of a deeper division that could further challenge the monarchy's stability? As Prince Harry moves forward without the title of Duke of Sussex, the British royal family must also adjust to this new reality. While they have spent the past few years navigating the fallout from his departure, this decision marks a definitive shift. There is no longer any ambiguity about Harry's status within the monarchy. He is now fully separated from the institution. But what does this mean for the royal family's future? Will this move strengthen their position, or does it expose deeper fractures that could threaten their long-term stability? To answer these questions, we must examine how the monarchy functions as an institution and the challenges it faces in a rapidly changing world. The British royal family is one of the oldest and most recognizable institutions in the world, but it is also under increasing pressure to modernize and remain relevant. In recent years, public support for the monarchy has fluctuated, particularly among younger generations who question the necessity of a hereditary system. King Charles, who ascended to the throne following the death of Queen Elizabeth II, has made it clear that he intends to streamline the monarchy. This means focusing on a core group of working royals and reducing the number of family members who hold official roles. The decision to remove Harry's title fits into this broader strategy, signaling that the monarchy is willing to take decisive action to preserve its integrity. By officially cutting ties with Harry, the royal family is reinforcing the idea that being a royal is not just about birthright, it is about duty and service. This move sends a message that titles are not lifelong privileges but responsibilities that must be upheld. For many royal supporters, this is a necessary step in ensuring that the monarchy remains focused on its core mission rather than being dragged into personal dramas. However, this decision also raises important questions about the future of the royal family's relationships. While the monarchy has survived many crises in the past, family dynamics play a significant role in shaping public perception. The estrangement between Harry and the royal family has been one of the most publicized conflicts in recent royal history, and this move could either bring a sense of closure or deepen the divide. Prince William, in particular, stands at the center of this transition. As the heir to the throne, he is increasingly taking on more responsibilities, and his leadership style will shape the future of the monarchy. The loss of his brother as a working royal means that the burden of public duties falls even more heavily on him and his wife, Kate Middleton. In the past, royal siblings have often played supportive roles to the heir, providing stability and continuity within the family. With Harry no longer part of that structure, William's path as future king becomes more isolated. The impact on King Charles is also significant. While Charles has always been seen as a pragmatic and duty-driven monarch, he is also a father. Stripping his son of a royal title is not just a political decision, it is a deeply personal one. Despite their differences, Charles has expressed a desire for reconciliation with Harry, and it is possible that he struggled with making this final break. However, as king, he must prioritize the institution over personal relationships, and this decision reflects his commitment to upholding the monarchy's values. One of the biggest challenges the royal family now faces is controlling the narrative surrounding this decision. In the past, the monarchy has relied on a combination of official statements, carefully managed press relations, and public appearances to shape public perception. However, in the digital age, controlling the narrative is more difficult than ever. Social media allows for immediate reactions, speculation, and alternative viewpoints that can quickly gain traction. The palace will likely emphasize that this move was made to protect the integrity of the monarchy, rather than as a punishment for Harry. The official messaging will focus on the idea that Harry has chosen a different path, and that the royal family respects his decision. However, this does not mean that the media will follow that script. British tabloids, which have long been critical of Harry and Meghan, are likely to frame this as a victory for the monarchy. Headlines will portray it as the royal family standing firm against those who tried to disrupt tradition. Meanwhile, more progressive outlets and international media may view it differently, questioning whether this move was necessary and whether it reflects poorly on the monarchy's ability to evolve. There is also the issue of precedent. While this decision was made specifically in response to Harry's situation, it sets a standard for how future royals may be treated if they choose to step away from their roles. In the past, members of the royal family who distanced themselves from the crown were often given some level of autonomy while still retaining their titles. Now, the message is clear. If you leave completely. This could have implications for other royal family members, particularly the younger generation. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis will eventually grow up and decide what role they want to play in the monarchy. If any of them choose to step away from royal duties in the future, will they also be stripped of their titles? Or will the monarchy adopt a more flexible approach? Another key consideration is how this affects the monarchy's relationship with the British public. While many royal supporters view this as a necessary decision, there is always the risk of alienating those who sympathize with Harry. The monarchy's popularity has fluctuated over the years, and major decisions like this can have lasting effects. For some, this move may reinforce the perception that the royal family is rigid and unyielding, unwilling to adapt to changing times. For others, it may be seen as a sign of strength, proving that the monarchy will not allow individual members to undermine its values. The challenge for the royal family is finding a balance between preserving tradition and demonstrating that they can evolve in a way that resonates with modern audiences. Beyond the United Kingdom, this decision also has international implications. The British monarchy remains one of the most recognized institutions in the world, and changes within it often have global ripple effects. In Commonwealth nations where debates about the monarchy's relevance are already underway, this decision could influence discussions about whether to maintain ties with the British Crown. Countries like Australia, Canada, and Jamaica have been re-evaluating their relationships with the monarchy, and a high-profile split like this could be used as further justification for moving toward republic status. Within the United States, where Harry and Meghan now reside, this decision will likely be viewed through a different lens. Many Americans have embraced the Sussexes as symbols of independence, seeing their decision to step away from royal life as an act of self-determination. The loss of Harry's title may not diminish his appeal in the U.S., but it does further separate him from the institution that once defined him. The broader question that arises from all of this is whether the monarchy is better off without Harry. In some ways, his departure allows the royal family to move forward without the constant controversy that has surrounded his actions in recent years. By making a clean break, they eliminate the ongoing speculation about whether he will return and whether he still has a role within the institution. However, the loss of a royal family member, particularly one who was once considered an important part of its future, is not something that can be ignored. While Harry's actions may have been seen as disruptive, his presence also brought a sense of modernity and relatability to the monarchy. His work on issues like mental health and veterans' affairs resonated with many people, and his absence leaves a gap that will need to be filled by other members of the family. As the royal family moves forward, they must consider how they will present themselves in this new era. The departure of Prince Harry and the decision to strip him of his title mark a significant moment in their history. Whether this strengthens or weakens the monarchy will depend on how they navigate the next steps. For Harry, the journey ahead is equally uncertain. Without a title, he is now fully independent, free to define his own legacy. But with that freedom comes the reality that he is no longer part of the institution that once shaped his life. The coming years will determine whether he thrives in this new chapter or whether he finds himself questioning the choices that led him here. As we continue examining this story, the next crucial aspect to explore is whether this decision represents the final break between Harry and the royal family, or if there is still a possibility of reconciliation in the future. Is there any path back for him, or has this move permanently severed his ties to the monarchy? With Prince Harry now officially without his Sussex title, one of the biggest lingering questions is whether this decision represents the final break between him and the royal family, or if reconciliation remains a possibility. Over the past few years, the relationship between Harry and his family has been marked by tension, public criticism, and deep divisions. But history has shown that even the most fractured royal relationships can sometimes be repaired. Is there a path back for Harry, or has this move permanently severed his ties to the monarchy? Reconciliation within the royal family has always been a complex and delicate process. Unlike an ordinary family dispute, where personal feelings can be discussed and resolved privately, royal disagreements play out on a global stage. Every interaction, every decision, and every public statement is scrutinized, making it far more difficult to mend relationships without external pressures influencing the outcome. For King Charles, the decision to remove Harry's title was likely one of the most difficult he has faced as monarch. Despite their differences, Charles has always maintained that he loves his son and wishes for reconciliation. However, as king, he must also prioritize the stability of the monarchy. By making this decision, he has sent a clear message that the institution comes first, even before family ties. But does this mean the door is permanently closed? Not necessarily. While this move creates a clear boundary between Harry and the royal family, it does not erase the fact that he is still Charles's son and William's brother. History has shown that royal feuds can sometimes be repaired, even after years of estrangement. One of the most notable examples is the relationship between Queen Elizabeth II and her uncle, Edward VIII. When Edward abdicated the throne in 1936 to marry Wallis Simpson, he was effectively cast out from the royal family. He lived the rest of his life in exile, with little contact with his relatives. However, over time, there were small moments of reconciliation. He was invited to some royal events, and though he never regained his status, he was not completely erased from the family's history. Similarly, Prince Charles himself went through a period of public disapproval following his divorce from Princess Diana and his subsequent relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles. For years, there was significant tension between Charles and his sons, particularly Harry, who was deeply affected by his mother's struggles. However, with time, Charles was able to rebuild his public image and eventually gain acceptance for his marriage to Camilla. These examples suggest that while the removal of Harry's title is a significant step, it does not mean that reconciliation is impossible. The question is, what would it take for Harry and the royal family to mend their relationship? One major factor is time. Right now, emotions are still running high, and the wounds from the past few years have not yet healed. But as time passes, perspectives can shift. King Charles is in his 70s, and as he continues his reign, he may prioritize repairing relationships within his family. Similarly, as Harry continues to build his life in the United States, he may reach a point where he wishes to reconnect on a personal level, even if he never returns to royal duties. Another key factor is how Harry chooses to move forward. If he continues to publicly criticize the royal family or release additional books or interviews that reveal private details, it will only deepen the divide. However, if he shifts his focus entirely to his work and stops engaging in direct criticism, it could create an opening for future discussions. Prince William's role in any reconciliation is also crucial. As the future king, William will eventually be the head of the monarchy, and his stance on Harry's place within the family will carry significant weight. The relationship between the two brothers has been particularly strained, with William reportedly feeling betrayed by Harry's actions. If they are ever to reconcile, it will require both of them to be willing to set aside past grievances and focus on rebuilding their bond. Public perception will also play a role. The British public has been divided on Harry's departure, with some sympathizing with his decision to leave and others viewing it as a betrayal of the monarchy. If public sentiment shifts in favor of reconciliation, it could put pressure on the royal family to extend an olive branch. Conversely, if Harry remains a polarizing figure, the monarchy may see no benefit in welcoming him back in any capacity. Another question is whether the removal of his title makes reconciliation easier or harder. On one hand, it eliminates the issue of him holding a royal title while living as a private citizen, which was a major source of controversy. Without the title, there may be fewer expectations about his role within the family, making it possible for him to reconnect on a personal level without the weight of royal obligations. On the other hand, losing his title may also make it more difficult for Harry to find common ground with his family. The royal titles serve as a connection to shared history and tradition, and their removal may make him feel even more distant from his past. If he perceives the decision as a final rejection, he may be less inclined to seek reconciliation. Meghan Markle's role in any potential reconciliation is another significant factor. While Harry's relationship with his family has been at the center of public attention, Meghan's relationship with the royal family is equally complicated. She has faced intense scrutiny from the British press, and her experiences within the royal institution were a major reason for the couple's departure. If reconciliation is to happen, it will require both sides to address the tensions that exist not just between Harry and his family, but also between Meghan and the royal establishment. There is also the matter of their children, Archie and Lilibet. As they grow older, they may begin to ask questions about their royal heritage and their family in the United Kingdom. It is possible that, for their sake, Harry and Meghan may seek to maintain some level of connection with the royal family, even if it is informal. If the children express interest in knowing their royal relatives, it could serve as a bridge for healing past wounds. One potential scenario for reconciliation is through private meetings rather than public declarations. If the royal family and Harry were to have quiet, off-the-record conversations, away from the scrutiny of the press, it could allow them to rebuild trust without external pressures. In the past, Royal disputes have often been resolved behind closed doors before being presented to the public in a unified manner. Ultimately, whether or not reconciliation happens depends on the willingness of both sides to move past their differences. The removal of Harry's title is a significant step, but it does not mean that all hope for reconciliation is lost. Families, even royal ones, are complicated, and relationships can evolve over time. For now, Harry is moving forward as a private citizen, free from royal obligations. But as history has shown, the ties of family are not easily broken. Whether this is truly the end of his connection to the monarchy or just another chapter in an ongoing story remains to be seen. As we continue examining the impact of this decision, the next important topic to explore is how it affects the monarchy's long-term future. Does this move strengthen the royal family's position, or does it expose deeper vulnerabilities? Is this a sign that the monarchy is adapting to modern times, or is it a rigid institution unwilling to embrace change? These questions will shape the legacy of this decision for years to come. Now that Prince Harry's royal title has been officially revoked, a crucial question emerges. What does this decision mean for the future of the British monarchy? Does it solidify the institution's stability by reinforcing a sense of duty and hierarchy, or does it expose vulnerabilities that could further weaken the crown? The monarchy has always been an institution that thrives on continuity and tradition. The British royal family has weathered centuries of political upheaval, shifting social norms, and personal scandals, yet it has remained standing. The removal of Harry's Sussex title marks a significant moment, but it is not the first time the monarchy has faced difficult choices regarding family members who have challenged its structure. To fully understand the implications of this move, it is necessary to examine how the monarchy has handled similar situations in the past, how it is positioning itself for the future, and whether this decision ultimately strengthens or weakens its long-term standing. Historically, the British royal family has always sought to maintain control over its image, especially when dealing with members who deviate from traditional expectations. One of the most famous examples is the case of King Edward VIII, who abdicated the throne in 1936 to Mary Wallace Simpson, an American divorcee. His decision sent shockwaves through the monarchy, forcing his younger brother, George VI, to take the throne. In response, Edward was stripped of his status as king and given the title Duke of Windsor, but he was effectively exiled from royal life. At the time, the decision was seen as necessary to uphold the stability of the crown. Allowing a monarch to marry a divorcee was considered unacceptable, and the abdication crisis highlighted the tension between personal choice and royal duty. Edward spent the rest of his life living abroad, with limited involvement in royal affairs. While the monarchy survived the crisis, it also demonstrated its willingness to sever ties with those who failed to adhere to its expectations. A more recent comparison can be made to Prince Andrew, who was stripped of his royal patronages and military titles following allegations of sexual misconduct and his association with Jeffrey Epstein. While he was allowed to retain his title as Duke of York, his public role within the royal family was effectively ended. The monarchy's response to Andrew's scandal was an attempt to protect its reputation and distance itself from controversy. Harry's situation is different from both Edward VIII and Prince Andrew. Unlike Edward, Harry did not abdicate a throne, and unlike Andrew, he is not involved in a criminal scandal. His offense, in the eyes of the monarchy, is that he chose to step away from royal duties and later engaged in public criticism of the institution. The decision to remove his Sussex title places him in a unique category. He is not a disgraced royal in the traditional sense, but he is also no longer considered part of the monarchy's future. From the perspective of the monarchy, this decision may be seen as a necessary step in preserving its integrity. By taking a firm stance, King Charles is reinforcing the idea that royal titles come with responsibilities and that they cannot be used for personal gain outside of the institution. This move also serves as a warning to future royals who may consider stepping away from their duties while still attempting to maintain their royal status. However, there is also a risk that this decision could create long-term challenges for the monarchy. One of the primary concerns is how it will affect public perception, particularly among younger generations who are already questioning the relevance of the monarchy. Polling data in recent years has shown a gradual decline in support for the monarchy, especially among younger Britons. While the institution still enjoys strong backing from older generations, there is an increasing sentiment that the royal family is out of touch with modern values. The removal of Harry's title may be seen by some as an example of the monarchy's unwillingness to adapt to changing times. Younger audiences tend to value individuality, personal choice, and the ability to shape one's own destiny. In their eyes, Harry's departure from royal life was not an act of betrayal but a reflection of the realities of modern life. Many people change careers, relocate to new countries, or redefine their identities based on personal happiness rather than tradition. By stripping Harry of his title, the monarchy may reinforce the perception that it is an institution that prioritizes rules over personal well-being. This is particularly relevant when considering the future of the younger generation of royals, including Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. As they grow up, they will have to navigate their roles within the monarchy, and the precedent set by Harry's situation could influence their decisions. If any of them decide in the future that they do not wish to remain part of the royal structure, will they face the same fate? Another factor to consider is how this decision affects the monarchy's global image. The British royal family is one of the most internationally recognized institutions, and its influence extends far beyond the United Kingdom. In recent years, there has been growing discussion in Commonwealth nations about whether to maintain ties with the British Crown. Countries like Australia, Canada, and Jamaica have debated the idea of becoming republics, with some leaders openly questioning the need for a monarchy in the modern era. The removal of Harry's title could play into these discussions, as it highlights the rigidity of the institution and its emphasis on control over its members. In nations where monarchy-related debates are ongoing, this decision may be cited as further evidence that the British royal family is not as progressive or adaptable as it claims to be. Additionally, the international media landscape has changed significantly, making it more difficult for the royal family to control its narrative. In the past, royal decisions were largely shaped by traditional British media outlets, which often worked closely with the palace to manage public perception. Today, social media platforms like Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram allow for instantaneous reactions from people around the world. Within hours of the announcement that Harry's title had been removed, online discussions erupted, with supporters and critics debating the implications. On one side, there were those who applauded the decision, arguing that it was necessary to protect the monarchy's integrity. On the other side, there were those who saw it as a punitive and outdated move that reflected poorly on the institution. The role of Meghan Markle in this broader conversation cannot be ignored. As a former actress and public figure, Meghan has always been comfortable in the spotlight, but her relationship with the royal family has been highly polarizing. Supporters view her as someone who challenged outdated norms and faced unjust scrutiny, while critics see her as someone who disrupted the monarchy's stability. With Harry now officially removed from the royal structure, questions arise about how Meghan will position herself moving forward. Will she continue to use the Duchess of Sussex title informally, or will she fully distance herself from royal branding? The way she navigates this transition could influence public perception of the monarchy's handling of the situation. Ultimately, the decision to strip Harry of his Sussex title is one that will have lasting consequences. In the short term, it reinforces King Charles's efforts to streamline the monarchy and assert control over its image. However, in the long term, it may contribute to ongoing debates about the monarchy's place in modern society. For now, the royal family will focus on moving forward without Harry. King Charles, Prince William, and other senior royals will continue their duties, working to maintain the monarchy's stability. But the question remains, will this decision strengthen the institution, or will it be remembered as a moment that further divided the royal family and the public? As this story continues to develop, the final piece to examine is what the future holds for both Harry and the monarchy. Will this decision be the last major change in their relationship, or is there still more to come? Does this mark the end of Harry's royal story, or could circumstances arise that bring him back into the fold? These are the questions that will define the next chapter in this ongoing saga. With the formal removal of Prince Harry's Sussex title, both he and the British royal family now stand at a crossroads. The decision has been made, the separation finalized, but what comes next? Will this be the last major development in the saga between Harry and the monarchy, or will new challenges, revelations, and changing circumstances continue to reshape their relationship? For Prince Harry, the loss of his royal title marks the completion of a transformation that began years ago. Once known as the rebellious younger prince, then as the modern royal who sought to redefine the role of monarchy in the 21st century, he is now a man without an official royal identity. But what does this mean for his future? One of the biggest questions is how he will navigate life without the Sussex title. While he remains Prince Harry by birth, the formal removal of his duchy means that he no longer has a royal designation tied to his name. This could impact everything from his professional opportunities to how he is introduced in public appearances. For years, Harry and Meghan's brand has been closely associated with their royal status. Their business ventures, philanthropic projects, and media deals were all built around their identities as the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Now, Harry must redefine himself without that branding. In the entertainment and media world, titles carry weight. While his name alone will always command attention, losing his formal status could make a difference in how he is positioned in Hollywood and the corporate world. Will companies still see him as the globally recognized prince, or will he begin to be viewed as just another celebrity with a famous past? Harry's financial independence will also be put to the test. Since stepping away from royal life, he has been involved in multiple high-profile deals, from his Netflix contract to his best-selling memoir. While these ventures have been financially lucrative, some of them have not been as sustainable as expected. For example, the Sussex's Spotify deal was reportedly worth $20 million, but it ended prematurely after failing to meet expectations. Their Netflix projects, while drawing significant initial interest, have struggled to maintain long-term momentum. Without a royal title, Harry may face greater challenges in securing high-value deals that rely on the prestige of his former status. One possible path forward is for him to fully embrace his American identity. Becoming a permanent resident of the United States was a significant step, but will he take it further? If he chooses to pursue U.S. citizenship, it would solidify his break from the United Kingdom and open new doors for his career. It would also mean renouncing his ties to the British Crown in a more official capacity, something that could further define how he is viewed by the public. There is also the question of how he will continue his philanthropic work. One of the strongest aspects of Harry's post-royal career has been his advocacy for mental health, veterans issues, and humanitarian causes. The Invictus Games, which he founded to support wounded servicemen and women, remains one of his most respected initiatives. But without a royal title, will his ability to champion these causes be diminished? Will world leaders, charitable organizations, and major donors continue to see him as a figure of influence? Or will his role shift to that of an ordinary philanthropist rather than a royal patron? At the same time, Harry's personal life will also be shaped by this decision. His family, Meghan Markle, Archie, and Lilibet, will continue to be at the center of his world, but how will they adjust to this new phase? For Meghan, the impact of this decision is just as significant. While she has always been more comfortable in the entertainment industry than in the royal world, her title as Duchess of Sussex carried a certain level of prestige. Now, with Harry no longer being a duke, does she continue to use her title unofficially, or does she follow his lead in stepping away from royal branding entirely? The future of their children also raises questions. Archie and Lilibet, as the children of a prince, are entitled to royal titles under the 1917 letters patent issued by King George V. However, their parents have chosen not to use those titles publicly. Now that Harry has lost his Sussex title, what does this mean for his children's royal status? Will they grow up completely separate from the monarchy, or will they one day seek to reclaim their heritage?